best term probably is that it's a retelling of that story. You know, it's a great story. The original film is not a film that the majority of the movie-going public has seen, and it made sense to me that it's a story they ought to experience. And so I wanted to retell that story for modern times, for our era.
Well, when I was looking at The Day the Earth Stood Still, it's a worthwhile story, and in terms of playing Klaatu, the alien, it's a good role. You know, the film is trying to kind of, as Shakespeare would say, hold a mirror up to nature.
I think the human nature bends toward self-destruction and destruction of each other. That's what we do as human beings, unfortunately. But we have a tremendous capacity to not do that, especially when we realize that that's what we're doing, and when we realize that we are on the brink of self-destruction, that when we realize that we are being too violent, that there is a capacity for change. And I think that certainly in my country, there's an air of optimism right now. There's an air of excitement that some positive change is coming and some positive transformation is coming.
Yeah, human beings do a lot of irrational things that are not maybe in their best interests. You know, we do that personally, we do that tribally, we do that collectively. Yeah, we have to watch ourselves.
That's what I really like about the original, is that there are big visual effects in it. It is very entertaining. It is a science fiction story, but at the heart of it is a small, kind of intimate human drama. And I loved the idea of an alien trying to observe human nature and trying to evaluate human nature. I think that's really compelling. And ultimately, I think that this film, like the original, is optimistic about human nature. And even though we have this capacity to destroy ourselves, there is a good chance that we will change, that we will get ourselves out of some of the messes that we've gotten ourselves into.
Yeah, we seem to be a quite fear-driven, fear-based creature. But I think the message of the film is positive. I mean, that's how I look at it. I think that with all of this fear and trial that us as a species, when we have our backs up against the wall, that there is a moment where we can have the better of ourselves, where we can have compassion, where we can have understanding. It's got a kind of objective rationality, and through the course of the film, a kind of, you know, he's affected by being in the human body, and affected by what he sees. And so I think in the marriage of that is this a kind of coming to a rational emotionality.
He comes to understand that love, and in this case his observation of a love between a mother and a child, is itself profound, and is itself meaningful, and is itself something that ought to be protected and preserved. I like that idea very much.
I liked his sort of subtle shift to sort of someone who was, you know, living in this body that was so foreign, and then, you know, after spending some time in that body, and who was sort of living in it, to see how it affected him. I thought he did that really nicely. What it's about is really timely, so much so that you know, even my son saw it the other day, and he went, wow, I can't believe you guys wrote this. You know, they wrote that then, and you guys made this last year, and then everything that's going on, and the stock market and the economy and elections, and you know, it really feels like it's of this time. I think it's a really great movie. I think it was really relevant to its time. I think it was, you know, had all the qualities that it's a really special film. I think it was a huge spectacle at its time. I think it was sort of cutting edge and visually. I think the performances are really good, and I think politically it was sort of spoke to that political climate. Yeah.
The original is, yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, Michael Rennie's character, you know, Carpenter, was more human than human in a way. Our take on it for Klaatu specifically, for me, was almost inverted. You know, he's not human, but at the end he makes something that's ultimately human, a sacrifice of himself, you know, thinking of others. Michael Rennie became, you know, was more human than human, but then at the end, you know, he was just letting everyone know he had a bigger stick. With Scott Derrickson, the director, was collaborative, you know, and he let me into the process before we started filming of working on the scenario. You know, we got to work on the script with him and with the writer David Scarpa for a few weeks beforehand, and also working with the producers and with the studio, Fox Studio. You know, there were many meetings about where was the story going, what are we going to tell. So it was pretty collaborative, and it was great to be a part of that.
Well, that's it. I always feel pressure. I mean, I'm that kind of person, you know. I mean, I take my work really seriously, and I'm kind of hard on myself. So, but this felt like it was a big task. I mean, I was in like almost every scene. I read about what she does first because I thought it would first of all be wise, because I'd like to know what it was that I was talking about in those scenes when she's in school, and spoke to scientists about, you know, I spoke to astrobiologists, but I was also interested in it to think about who she might be and why she might be doing that and what she might be interested in and curious about. And then worked with Scott Derrickson. We had a nice rehearsal period where we talked about the film and talked about the script and sat down with Keanu and read through everything and to make sure that, you know, the scenes supported what we wanted to do. And was there anything that was out of place or needed adjustment? Or it's a big movie and there's a lot of scenes that I'm in, so yeah, you think, oh God, you know, yeah, you don't want to mess up, you know. Yeah, I felt some pressure.
Yeah.
To sort of try and make it work and make the movie work, and yeah.
I had a hesitancy to do a remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still. You know, for me it was like, why? Why do it? And I met with Scott Derrickson a few times, went to his home, met with him and the writer. And what came to me from that was that Scott had a why. You know, he had a real appreciation for making the remake, an appreciation for Robert Wise, the director of the original, but also he had an idea of a why to make it now. You know, there was a story from then, but this is our film, our time, and what can we communicate? And so he had the direction, and you know, I believed in him, and here we are.